When my son died, his widow blamed their 17-year-old daughter and chose bottles over her own child. I found my granddaughter alone, starving, wearing the same clothes for months. A decade later, she is a trauma surgeon. Then one night, her mother arrived at her ER barely alive. She had 12 minutes to decide. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to how this nightmare started. 4 months earlier, Michael Carter had called me from the hospital. "Mom, it is bad," he had said, his voice weak from the cancer treatments. "Karen Miller has been drinking again, and she blames Emma for everything. Says if Emma had not been born, we would have had more money, better insurance, a different life." My son was 39 years old, dying, and still trying to protect everyone from the truth about his wife. I drove down from Seattle to Aurora, Colorado immediately. But Michael died 2 days before I arrived. The funeral was a disaster. Karen showed up drunk, screaming at Emma that it was her fault Michael got sick from working too many jobs to support her. The poor child just stood there, tears streaming down her face, while her mother destroyed her in front of the entire congregation. After the service, I tried to talk to Karen about Emma. "She needs stability right now," I said. "Maybe Emma could come stay with me for a while." Karen's response still haunts me. "Take her then. I never wanted her anyway. One less mouth to feed." But when I went to pick Emma up the next morning, they were gone. Disappeared without a trace. I spent 4 months hiring private investigators, checking schools, calling every family services office in Colorado. Nothing. It was like they had vanished into thin air. Then last Tuesday, my neighbor Mrs. Reynolds called Evelyn. "There is a girl behind the Target on Colfax who looks just like your Michael did at that age." My heart nearly stopped. I drove straight there, and that is when I saw her. My granddaughter, my brilliant, beautiful Emma, reduced to scavenging for food scraps. She was so thin I could see her ribs through that filthy sweater. Her once beautiful blonde hair was matted and dirty. But those green eyes, Michael's eyes, recognized me immediately. "Grandma Evelyn," she whispered. And I thought my heart would break into a million pieces. I wrapped her in my coat and got her into my car. "Where is your mother, sweetheart?" Emma just shook her head and started crying. Through her sobs, I pieced together the story. After Michael died, Karen had blown through the life insurance money in 7 weeks, gambling, drinking, buying things for her new boyfriend. When the money ran out, she had abandoned Emma Grace Carter in some flea motel and disappeared with whatever man would pay for her drinks. Emma Grace Carter had been living on the streets for 3 months. 3 months. A 17-year-old child alone, afraid, with no one to turn to. That night, as I watched her sleep in my guest room after her first real meal and hot shower in weeks, I made a promise. Emma Grace Carter would never be abandoned again. I did not care what it cost me, what I had to do, or who I had to fight. This child was going to have the life Michael Carter had wanted for her. But I had no idea that 14 years later, Emma Grace Carter would become a trauma surgeon. And I definitely could not have predicted that one night her mother would arrive at her ER, barely alive, forcing Emma Grace Carter to make an impossible choice. That night changed everything, but not in the way any of us expected. The social worker, Ms. Coleman, sat in my living room with a clipboard and the kind of expression that said she had seen too much tragedy in her 30-year career. "Mrs. Carter, Emma Grace. Carter is not legally your responsibility." Her mother is still alive, and until the state declares her unfit, you are essentially harboring a runaway. I poured myself another cup of coffee, trying to look calmer than I felt. Ms. Coleman, Emma Grace Carter's mother, had abandoned her in a motel and disappeared with her boyfriend. How much more unfit do we need? Without proof of abandonment or abuse, my hands are tied. We need documentation, witnesses, something concrete. She looked at Emma Grace Carter, who was curled up on my couch, reading one of Michael Carter's old books. She seems healthy and well cared for now, but Karen Miller could show up tomorrow, demanding her daughter back. That is exactly what I was afraid of. Karen Miller showing up drunk, causing a scene, dragging Emma Grace Carter back into chaos. What do I need to do to get legal custody file for emergency guardianship? Document everything. Where you found her, her condition, any evidence of neglect. It will take time, probably 6 months, if Karen Miller does not contest it. Ms. Coleman glanced at Emma Grace Carter again. She is clearly bonded with you. That will work in our favor. After she left, I sat Emma Grace Carter down for a conversation I had been dreading. Sweetheart, we need to talk about what happens if your mother comes back. Emma Grace Carter's face went pale. She will not. She told me I ruined her life, and she never wanted to see me again. The matter-of-fact way she said it broke my heart. No child should ever have to repeat those words. Well, just in case, we are going to make sure you are safe legally. But Emma, Grace Carter, I need you to tell me everything that happened after your father died. Every detail, even the hard parts. For the next 2 hours, Emma Grace Carter told me stories that made me want to find Karen Miller and shake her until her teeth rattled. The nights Karen Miller came home drunk and screamed at Emma Grace Carter for looking like Michael Carter. The weeks they lived on ramen noodles because Karen Miller spent the grocery money at the casino. The time Karen Miller brought home a stranger who tried to get into Emma Grace Carter's room in the middle of the night. I started keeping a knife under my pillow, Emma Grace Carter admitted. Mom said I was being dramatic, but I was scared all the time. She was 17 years old and had been sleeping with a weapon to protect herself from her mother's boyfriends. If that was not evidence of an unfit parent, I did not know what was. The next morning, I enrolled Emma Grace Carter at Ridgeview High School. The counselor, Mrs. Turner, looked at Emma Grace Carter's transcripts and whistled straight A's, even during what I assume was a difficult period at home. This is exceptional, Emma. Have you thought about college? Emma Grace Carter's eyes lit up for the first time since I had found her. I want to be a doctor. Like a real doctor who helps people. The determination in her voice reminded me so much of Michael Carter at that age. He had wanted to be a doctor too, but life had gotten in the way, marriage, baby bills, and eventually the construction job that probably exposed him to the chemicals that gave him cancer. Well, with grades like these, medical school is definitely possible, Mrs. Turner said. We will need to get you involved in some extracurricular activities, maybe some volunteer work at the hospital. On the drive home, Emma Grace Carter was quiet. Finally, she said, Grandma Evelyn, do you really think I could be a doctor? Mom always said I was too stupid for college. I pulled over and turned to face her. Emma? Grace Carter, your mother was wrong about a lot of things, but she was especially wrong about you. You are brilliant, determined, and you have more strength at 17 than most adults have in their entire lives. If you want to be a doctor, we will make it happen. That weekend, we went shopping for school supplies and clothes that actually fit. Emma Grace Carter kept touching everything like she could not believe it was real. Grandma, this is too much money, she said when I bought her a winter coat. Sweetheart, this is what families do. We take care of each other. I did not tell her I was spending my retirement savings, or that I had already started looking for a part-time job to help with expenses. Emma's future was worth every penny. 7 weeks later, we got the call I had been dreading. Karen Miller had surfaced, and she wanted Emma Grace Carter back. Karen showed up on my doorstep at 10 Hori on a Tuesday night, drunk enough to need the porch railing for support, but sober enough to be dangerous. "Where is my daughter, Evelyn? I know you have her." I did not open the door. "Emma's asleep, Karen. It is a school night." School night, Karen Miller laughed a harsh, bitter sound. "Since when does she care about school? Emma has been nothing but trouble since Michael died. I tried to handle her myself, but she is too much work." Too much work. That was how this woman described her own child. I kept my voice steady, though inside I was furious. "Karen, you abandoned Emma at a motel. She was living on the streets when I found her. I did not abandon her. I left her with my cousin Debbie. The lie came so easily I almost admired the skill." Almost. Debbie must have gotten tired of dealing with her attitude. There was no cousin Debbie. Emma had told me everything, and there had been no family member involved. Karen had simply packed her bags, taken the last of the insurance money, and left Emma with $30 and a note saying she was going to find herself. Karen Emma is settled here. She is doing well in school, making friends. Why do you not get yourself help first? Then we can talk about visits. Visits! Her voice rose to a shriek. She is my daughter, not yours. Michael is dead, and that means I make the decisions about Emma. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Emma Grace Carter at the top of the stairs, still in her pajamas, but wide awake. The look on her face told me she had heard everything. The fear in her eyes made me want to march outside and drag Karen Miller off my property by her bleached hair. "Mom." Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Karen pushed past me into the house before I could stop her. "There is my girl. Come give Mama a hug." She held out her arms, swaying slightly. Emma stayed on the stairs. "Mom, you left me. You said you never wanted to see me again. I was grieving baby. I said things I did not mean, but I am better now, and I want us to be a family again." The performance was almost convincing. If I did not know better, I might have believed the tears in Karen's eyes were real. But Emma knew better too. "Where are we going to live?" "Do you have an apartment? We will figure it out together. Maybe stay with some friends until I get back on my feet." Translation. She had no place to live and planned to drag Emma from couch to couch until someone got tired of supporting them both. "I want to stay here with Grandma Evelyn. I am doing well in school and I have friends here." Karen's fake maternal act cracked. "You have been poisoning her against me," she said, turning on me with surprising viciousness, filling her head with lies about what happened. The only lies Emma Grace Carter heard came from you, Karen. I have never said a word against you that was not true. You cannot keep my daughter from me. I will call the police. Please do. I am sure they would be very interested in talking to you about child abandonment." I kept my voice calm, but my heart was pounding. I had no idea if the legal paperwork Ms. Coleman and I had filed would be enough to protect Emma. Karen Miller must have realized she was on shaky ground because her tone shifted again. "Look, Evelyn, I know this looks bad, but I have been in rehab. I am clean now, and I want to make things right with Emma." If she had been in rehab, it had been the shortest program in history. She had been gone exactly 4 months, and that was nowhere near enough time for someone with her level of addiction to get truly sober. If you are serious about making things right, then you will respect Emma's wishes. She wants to stay here and finish high school. After graduation, she can make her own decisions about your relationship. 2 years. Karen's voice rose again. "You want me to wait 2 years to get my daughter back? I want you to prove you are capable of being a mother before you disrupt Emma's life again." Karen looked at Emma still standing on the stairs like she was afraid to come down. "Is that what you want Em to stay here with your grandmother instead of your own mother?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." The single word hit Karen like a slap. For a moment, her face showed genuine pain. But then the anger returned stronger than before. "Fine, but this is not over, Evelyn. Emma is my blood, not yours, and I will get her back when I'm ready." She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Emma came downstairs and fell into my arms, crying. "She will be back," Emma whispered against my shoulder. "I know, sweetheart, but next time we will be ready." The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and expensive coffee, neither of which helped my anxiety, as Robert Hayes explained exactly how precarious our legal situation really was. "Mrs. Carter, the emergency guardianship petition has been approved temporarily, but Karen Miller can contest it at any time. If she shows up with a lawyer and proof of sobriety, a judge might rule in her favor." I had already spent $3,000 on legal fees, money I could not really afford, and now he was telling me it might not be enough. What kind of proof would convince a judge that Emma Grace Carter should stay with me permanently? Documentation of abandonment, evidence of neglect, witnesses to Karen's unfitness as a parent. The more concrete evidence we have, the stronger our case. Emma sat beside me, taking notes like she was studying for the most important test of her life, which in a way she was. "Mr. Hayes, what if my mom gets a job in an apartment? Does that automatically mean I have to go back?" "Not automatically," Robert Hayes replied. "But it would strengthen her case considerably." "Emma, you are 17. In Colorado, the court considers your wishes, but they are not the deciding factor. The judge will do what they believe is in your best interest, which is not always what you want." That night, Emma Grace Carter and I sat at the kitchen table making lists. People who had seen Karen Miller drunk and out of control. Neighbors who remembered the shouting matches, anyone who could testify to Emma's condition when I found her. "Mrs. Reynolds saw me behind the Target on Colfax," Emma said, writing carefully. "And the manager, Mr. Alvarez, might remember. He told me I could not sleep there anymore. What about your friends from your old neighborhood? Anyone who visited your house and saw how Karen was living?" Emma shook her head. "Mom did not let me have friends over after Dad died. She said she did not want people judging our family." The isolation had been deliberate, I realized. It was easier to hide the neglect if no one was around to witness it. 3 weeks later, Karen Miller made her next move. She showed up at Ridgeview High School during lunch, clean sober, and carrying a folder full of official-looking documents. She had somehow scraped together money, probably sold something, or borrowed from whatever desperate person would lend to her to hire a lawyer and buy respectable clothes. The school called me immediately. "Mrs. Carter, Karen Miller is here claiming she is Emma's legal guardian and demanding to take her home. She has what looks like court papers." My blood went cold. Do not let Emma leave with her. I am on my way. I broke several traffic laws getting to Ridgeview High School. In the principal's office, I found Karen Miller sitting across from Mr. Harper, looking remarkably put together. Her hair was clean and styled. She was wearing a conservative business suit, and she had the kind of confident smile I had not seen from her in years. "Evelyn," she said sweetly, "I was just explaining to Mr. Harper that there has been a misunderstanding about Emma's living situation. The papers she had brought were real, a motion to dismiss the guardianship petition and restore her parental rights. She had hired a lawyer, somehow found money for decent clothes, and was presenting herself as a reformed mother, fighting to reunite with her daughter." "Mr. Harper, I need to see Emma immediately. She is in the nurse's office," he said carefully. "She became quite upset when she heard her mother was here." I found Emma Grace Carter sitting on the cot in the nurse's office, crying quietly. "Grandma Evelyn, she looks so different. What if the judge believes she has changed?" "Emma, people can change their appearance overnight. Changing who they really are takes much longer." I hugged her tight. "We are going to fight this, but I need you to be strong." The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. 4 days to prepare for a battle that would determine Emma Grace Carter's entire future. Robert Hayes worked around the clock gathering statements from neighbors' medical records showing Emma's malnourished condition when I found her and school records documenting her academic improvement since living with me. But Karen Miller had been busy too. She had enrolled in an outpatient alcohol program, found a part-time job at a diner, and rented a small apartment. On paper, she looked like a mother who had made mistakes but was working hard to make amends. The night before the hearing, Emma could not sleep. I found her at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, staring out the window. "Grandma Evelyn, what if I have to go back to her? What if she really has changed this time?" I sat down beside her and took her hands. "Emma, even if your mother has stopped drinking, it does not erase what she did to you. A parent's job is to protect their child, not abandon them when life gets difficult. But what if the judge does not see it that way? Then we will deal with it. But sweetheart, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will never stop fighting for you. Even if I have to wait until you are 18, I will be here." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that broke my heart and made me proud at the same time. "I keep thinking about all the kids who do not have anyone to fight for them. After I become a doctor, I want to help them somehow." At 17, after everything she had been through, Emma Grace Carter was already thinking about helping other people. That was when I knew for certain that whatever happened in court, this remarkable young woman was going to be just fine. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected and colder. Judge Diane Walker had the kind of steely gray eyes that suggested she had heard every sob story and manipulation tactic in the book. Karen Miller sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, looking like a concerned mother in her navy blue dress and pearl earrings. Robert Hayes had warned me that family court judges see cases like this every day, bitter custody battles where both sides claim to be acting in the child's best interest. The key, he said, was showing the pattern of abandonment and neglect, not just isolated incidents. Karen Miller's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Linda Brooks, went first. "Your Honor, my client admits she made mistakes during a period of grief following her husband's death. However, Miss Miller has sought treatment for her alcohol dependency, secured stable employment, and obtained suitable housing. She is prepared to provide a loving home for her daughter." Judge Diane Walker looked at Karen Miller. "Miss Miller, tell me about the period following your husband's death and your decisions regarding Emma Grace Carter's care." This was where Karen Miller's performance had to be perfect, and unfortunately, she had had plenty of practice lying about her parenting. "Your Honor, I was devastated by Michael Carter's death. We had been married for 19 years, and I did not know how to function without him. I made some poor choices, I admit that. But I never stopped loving Emma Grace Carter." Can you explain how Emma Grace Carter ended up living on the streets I was struggling financially and emotionally? "I thought Emma Grace Carter would be better off with my cousin Debbie temporarily while I got my life together. When that arrangement did not work out, Emma Grace Carter ran away before I could make other arrangements. The lies came so smoothly, I almost believed them myself. There was no cousin Debbie, no plan for Emma Grace Carter's care, no intention to get her life together. But Karen Miller delivered the fiction with just the right amount of remorse and maternal concern. Robert Hayes had prepared me for this. Let her dig herself in deep with the lies. Then we will present the evidence that contradicts every word. When it was our turn, Robert Hayes called Mrs. Reynolds to the stand first. My neighbor testified about finding Emma Grace Carter behind the Target on Colfax, malnourished, and wearing clothes she had clearly worn for weeks. Then came Mr. Alvarez, the store manager, who remembered Emma Grace Carter sleeping in the parking lot and begging customers for food. The child was desperate, he said, looking directly at Judge Diane Walker. "I have seen homeless adults in better condition." Emma Grace Carter's school counselor testified about the dramatic improvement in her grades and emotional state since living with me. In my 25 years in education, I have rarely seen such a complete transformation. Emma went from a traumatized, undernourished child to a confident young woman with clear goals and academic potential. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. Amanda Ruiz, the emergency room physician who had examined Emma Grace Carter when I first brought her in for a checkup. The patient showed signs of prolonged malnutrition, poor hygiene, and what appeared to be chronic stress. Her emotional responses suggested possible trauma. This was not a child who had been properly cared for. When Robert Hayes called Emma Grace Carter to testify, my heart nearly stopped. We had practiced this, but seeing her walk to the witness stand, in her best dress looking so young and vulnerable, made me want to grab her and run. Judge Diane Walker's voice was gentle. Emma, I know this is difficult. I just want to ask you a few questions about your life before and after moving in with your grandmother. Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me about the last few months you lived with your mother? Emma Grace. Carter's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. After my dad died, Mom started drinking more. She would come home late sometimes with strangers. She stopped buying groceries and said I was old enough to take care of myself. How did you end up at the motel where your grandmother eventually found you? Mom packed my things and said she was going to find herself. She left me $30 and said I was on my own now. Emma paused, then added quietly. She said I reminded her too much of Dad, and it hurt to look at me. I saw Judge Diane Walker's expression shift slightly. That detail, the cruelty of rejecting a child for resembling her dead father, seemed to hit its mark. Emma, your mother says she left you with a relative who was supposed to care for you. No, ma'am, there was no relative. Mom left me at the Highland Motel by myself. When Linda Brooks cross-examined Emma, she tried to poke holes in her story, suggesting that grief and adolescent rebellion might have colored Emma's memories. But Emma remained calm and consistent. She answered every question honestly, even when it would have been easier to exaggerate or embellish. The hearing lasted 4 hours. When Judge Diane Walker called for a recess to review the evidence, Robert Hayes squeezed my shoulder. You did good preparation. Emma's testimony was compelling, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Karen Miller had presented well, and family courts generally prefer to keep children with biological parents when possible. 20 minutes later, Judge Diane Walker returned with her decision. This case presents a conflict between parental rights and a child's welfare. While I am encouraged by Miss Miller's recent efforts toward sobriety and stability, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of abandonment and neglect that placed Emma Grace Carter in serious danger. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear the rest. However, I am not convinced that terminating parental rights is necessary at this time. Instead, I am awarding temporary custody to Mrs. Evelyn Carter for a period of 1 year, with supervised visitation for Ms. Karen Miller, contingent on continued sobriety and completion of parenting classes. It was not the complete victory I had hoped for, but it was enough. Emma Grace Carter would stay with me, finish high school, and have a chance at the future she deserved. As we left the courthouse, Karen Miller caught up with us in the parking lot. This is not over, Evelyn. She is my daughter, and one day she will understand that blood is thicker than water. Emma. Grace Carter looked her mother straight in the eye and said, "Blood does not make someone family. Mom, love does." It was the last time Emma Grace Carter would see her mother for 14 years. 2 years later, Emma Grace Carter graduated valedictorian from Ridgeview High School with a full scholarship to the University of Colorado's pre-med program. The night before she left for college, we sat on the back porch watching the sunset both of us pretending we were not about to cry. Grandma Evelyn, what if I am not smart enough for medical school? What if I get there and realize I do not belong? I looked at this remarkable young woman who had survived abandonment, homelessness, and a custody battle that could have destroyed her spirit. Instead, she had transformed her pain into purpose, her trauma into determination. Emma, you have already survived things that would break most people. Medical school will be challenging, but it will not be harder than what you have already overcome. She leaned against my shoulder the way she used to when she was 17 and afraid. I keep thinking about that night in the motel when Mom left. I was so scared and alone. But I also remember thinking that someday I wanted to help other people who felt that hopeless. And now you are going to do exactly that. The first year of college was rough. Emma called me every Sunday, sometimes crying from exhaustion, sometimes frustrated by organic chemistry or physics. But she never once talked about giving up. By her sophomore year, she was thriving, Dean's List research opportunities, and leadership positions in pre-med clubs. During winter break of her junior year, she announced her specialty choice, trauma surgery. Grandma Evelyn, I want to work in emergency medicine, helping people when they are at their most vulnerable moment. That is going to be emotionally difficult, sweetheart. I know, she said softly, but maybe that is exactly why I need to do it. I understand what it feels like when your world falls apart in an instant. Medical school acceptance letters arrived on a Tuesday in March. Emma had applied to 12 programs and been accepted to 10, including her first choice, Rocky Mountain Medical Center's prestigious trauma surgery program. I cannot believe this is real, she said, holding the acceptance letter with tears in her eyes. Sometimes, I still feel like that scared 17-year-old behind the target on Colfax. Good. Do not ever forget her, Emma. She is the reason you will be an extraordinary doctor. Medical school was brutal 18-hour days, impossible exams, and clinical rotations that pushed students to their physical and emotional limits. But Emma Grace Carter had an advantage her classmates did not. She had already learned how to survive when everything seemed impossible. Her surgery rotation confirmed what I had always known: Emma had found her calling. Her supervising physician, Dr. Jonathan Lee, called me after her first month. Mrs. Carter, I have been teaching surgery for 15 years, and I have never seen a medical student with Emma's combination of technical skill and emotional intelligence, Dr. Jonathan Lee told me. She has an extraordinary gift. Emma Grace Carter's residency match day was one of the proudest moments of my life. She had been matched to Rocky Mountain Medical Center's trauma surgery program, the most competitive surgical specialty at one of the country's top hospitals. 5 years of residency, Grandma. 5 years of basically living at the hospital, and then I will finally be a real surgeon. You are already real to me, sweetheart, I told her, smiling through tears. During her 3rd year of residency, Emma met Drs. Nathan Porter, a fellow trauma surgeon 3 years ahead of her in the program. He was brilliant, kind, and completely smitten with my granddaughter. Their wedding was small, but perfect. Emma wore my mother's pearl necklace and carried white roses. Michael would have been so proud to walk her down the aisle. I am getting everything I never thought I would have, Emma whispered to me during their first dance. A career I love, a man who loves me, and the family I chose, rather than the one I was born into. By her 5th year of residency, Emma was chief resident, leading a team of junior doctors and handling the most complex trauma cases. Her reputation in the Denver medical community was extraordinary. Patients asked for her specifically, and other doctors sought her consultation on difficult cases. The night she finished her residency, we celebrated at a quiet restaurant downtown. Emma was finally Dr. Emma Porter, board-certified trauma surgeon, and I was the proudest grandmother in Colorado. Grandma Evelyn, do you remember what you said to me that first night when I came to live with you? She asked softly. You said Emma would never be abandoned again. I remember I said, holding her hand. You kept that promise. But more than that, you taught me what unconditional love looks like. That is what saved me, not just the rescue itself. 3 months into her attending physician position, Dr. Emma Porter was working a night shift in the trauma bay when an ambulance brought in a patient who would change everything. The woman was unconscious, severely malnourished, and showing signs of liver failure consistent with chronic alcoholism. When Emma looked at the patient's face, she nearly dropped her clipboard. Even after 12 years, even ravaged by addiction and poor health, she recognized her mother immediately. Karen Miller had finally resurfaced, and she was dying. Emma called me from the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning, her voice shaking. Grandma Evelyn, she is here. My mother is here, and she is dying. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What do you mean, she is here? In my trauma bay. The ambulance brought her in 20 minutes ago. She is unconscious, liver failure, maybe hours left. Emma's professional training was keeping her voice steady, but I could hear the shock underneath. I do not know what to do. First, you need to recuse yourself from her case. You cannot be her doctor, Emma. I already called Dr. Amanda Ruiz to take over. But Grandma, she looks so different, so old and sick. Whatever she has been doing for the past 14 years, it has destroyed her. I threw on my robe and drove straight to Rocky Mountain Medical Center. Immediately, I found Emma in the family consultation room, still in her scrubs, staring at her hands. Talk to me, sweetheart. What exactly is her condition? End-stage liver disease, probably from chronic alcohol abuse. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and what looks like complications from untreated diabetes, she said quietly. Dr. Ruiz thinks she has maybe 6 to 8 hours if we do not intervene aggressively. And if you do intervene, Emma was silent for a long moment. Maybe a few weeks, possibly months, if she responds well to treatment. But Grandma, she would need a liver transplant to have any real chance of survival. And given her history of alcoholism and current condition, she is not a candidate. The irony was devastating. Emma Grace Carter had become exactly the kind of doctor who could save lives. And the first life she could not save belonged to the woman who had abandoned her. Have you seen her yet? Talk to her. She has been unconscious since they brought her in, but her belongings, what little she had, were in a garbage bag. Her driver's license expired 5 years ago. Address listed as transient. There was a photo of Dad in her wallet and a newspaper clipping about my medical school graduation. That detail hit me like a punch to the stomach. For 12 years, I had assumed Karen Miller had forgotten about Emma entirely. But she had kept track, known about medical school, maybe even felt proud. It did not excuse anything she had done, but it complicated the simple story of complete abandonment. Emma, whatever you decide to do, it has to be your choice, not mine. Not what you think your father would have wanted yours. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Karen Miller regained consciousness. Emma was in the trauma bay when it happened, checking on another patient. Dr. Porter, she is asking for you, Dr. Ruiz said softly. She knows you are here. Emma looked through the glass at her mother, hooked up to machines that were keeping her alive. After 12 years of wondering what she would say if she ever saw Karen again, the moment had arrived. I will be right back, Grandma. I watched through the window as Emma Grace Carter approached her mother's bed. Karen Miller looked ancient, though she was only 53. Her hair was gray and thin, her face gaunt and yellow from liver failure. But her eyes, the same green eyes Emma had inherited from Michael Carter, were alert and focused on her daughter. I could not hear their conversation, but I watched Emma's body language change from professional detachment to something far more complicated. Karen Miller was talking rapidly, her hands gesturing weakly. Emma listened occasionally, nodding, her expression unreadable. After 10 minutes, Emma returned to the consultation room, tears streaming down her face. "What did she say, sweetheart?" I asked softly. "She apologized," Emma said, her voice trembling. "She said she knew she had been a terrible mother, that leaving me was the worst thing she had ever done. She said she had been following my career from a distance, and that she was proud of who I have become." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "She also said she would understand if I could not forgive her." "How do you feel about that?" I asked. "Angry, confused, sad for the time we lost," Emma whispered. "But also, I do not know, maybe a little relieved. For years, I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever regretted her choices. Now I know she did." Dr. Amanda Ruiz appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Porter, I need to talk to you about treatment options. She is stable for now, but her condition is deteriorating rapidly." The next few hours were a blur of medical consultations, ethical discussions, and impossible decisions. Karen Miller's liver was shutting down, her kidneys were failing, and her body was giving up after years of abuse. "We could put her on dialysis, try to stabilize her for a few weeks," Dr. Ruiz explained. "But given the extent of the organ damage, it would likely just prolong the inevitable." "What about comfort care?" I asked quietly. "We can manage her pain, keep her comfortable, and let nature take its course. Based on her current condition, probably 24 to 48 hours. Emma looked at me, then back at Dr. Ruiz. "Can I have a few minutes to think?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." That was when Emma made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "I want to try the aggressive treatment," she said firmly. "Not because I think it will save her, but because I need to know I did everything possible." "Emma, are you sure? After everything she put you through?" Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that showed me exactly what kind of person she had become. "Grandma Evelyn, she was a terrible mother, but she is still a human being who is dying alone. I became a doctor to save lives, not to judge which lives deserve saving." That night, Emma Grace Carter worked alongside Dr. Amanda Ruiz to stabilize her mother, dialysis, blood transfusions, medications to support her failing organs. It was a long shot, but for 48 hours, it seemed to be working. On the third day, Karen Miller had a moment of clarity that would change everything. "Emma, I need to tell you something before it is too late," she whispered, her voice weak, but her eyes focused and alert for the first time since she had arrived. "About your father's death, about why I really left you." Emma pulled a chair close to her mother's bed. After 3 days of aggressive treatment, Karen Miller's condition had stabilized enough for a lucid conversation, though everyone knew this was likely temporary. "Mom, you do not have to explain anything right now. Just rest." "No, I do," Karen whispered, "because what I am about to tell you changes everything you think you know about me, about your father, about us." I was sitting quietly in the corner of the room, and Emma looked at me uncertainly. Part of her did not want to hear whatever confession was coming, but another part needed to understand the woman who had shaped so much of her life through absence. "Your father did not die from cancer, Emma." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Emma went completely still. "What do you mean I was there during the treatments?" "I saw the medical records. He had cancer." Yes, Karen said weakly, but that is not what killed him. Her voice was fading, but she pushed through. Your father was involved with some very dangerous people through his construction work. Money laundering, off-the-books payments, things I did not understand, but should have questioned. Emma's face went pale. You are saying Dad was involved in criminal activity not willingly, not at first, but when you are desperate for money to pay for cancer treatments, when insurance will not cover experimental procedures, you make choices you never thought you would make. I felt sick listening to this. Michael Carter had been such a good man, such a devoted father. The idea that desperation had driven him into criminal activity was heartbreaking. Your father borrowed money from the wrong people to pay for treatments. Karen continued, her voice trembling. When the cancer came back and he could not work anymore, he could not repay what he owed. Karen Miller was crying now, the first real tears I had seen from her in nearly 15 years. They killed him, Emma. They made it look like a complication from the cancer, but they killed him. That is impossible, Emma said in disbelief. The doctors said his organs shut down from the chemotherapy. The doctors did not know what to look for. It was subtle something that would mimic organ failure. Karen reached for Emma's hand with shaking fingers. The night before he died, your father told me everything. He said they had threatened to hurt you next if the debt was not paid. Emma pulled her hand away, her voice sharp. So you left me. If Dad was killed because of money, he owed your solution was to abandon me. I left you because they told me if I disappeared and stayed gone, they would consider the debt settled. If I stayed, if I tried to fight for custody or make a scene, they would come after you. Karen's voice broke completely. I thought I was protecting you by leaving. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the monitors. Emma stood up and walked to the window, her back to her mother. Even if that is true, you could have explained. Emma said, her voice breaking. You could have told Grandma Evelyn or the police or someone who would have believed me. A grieving widow claiming her husband was murdered by loan sharks. Karen Miller whispered bitterly. They covered their tracks perfectly, and I had no proof. So you chose to let me think you abandoned me because you did not love me. I chose to let you hate me if it meant you would stay safe. Emma turned around, tears streaming down her face. For 14 years, I thought I was not worthy of love. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made my own mother leave. There was never anything wrong with you. Emma, Karen said weakly, you were the best thing Michael and I ever did together. And losing you was the worst punishment I could have faced. Where have you been all this time? Emma asked. Moving around, staying invisible, drinking too much because it was the only way to live with what I had done. Karen coughed, and I could see blood on her lips. I kept track of you, though. Newspaper articles, graduation announcements, anything I could find. I was so proud when you became a doctor. But I never thought I would see you again. Emma sat back down, her professional training warring with her personal emotions. Mom, why are you telling me this now? Because yesterday, one of them was here in the hospital asking questions about you. My blood went cold. Emma grabbed her mother's arm. What do you mean? Someone was here asking about me, middle-aged man. Expensive suit. Said he was from an insurance company checking on my family for benefits purposes. But I recognized the voice, Emma. It was Anthony Marchettith man who collected for the people Michael borrowed from. You think they found you? I think they never lost track of me, Karen said weakly. And if they are asking about you now, it means they are considering whether the debt is really settled. Karen's breathing was becoming labored. Emma, you need to be careful. These are not people who forget or forgive. Emma looked at me, panic flashing in her eyes. The mother who had abandoned her was dying, but she might also be the key to understanding a threat we did not even know existed. What exactly did Dad owe them? How much money are we talking about? $200,000 plus interest that has been compounding for 14 years, Karen whispered. By now, probably close to $500,000. Emma stood up again, pacing. This is insane. You are telling me that my father's murder was covered up, that you have been hiding for 12 years, and that now these people might be coming after me. I am telling you, Karen said, her voice breaking, that I made choices that seemed right at the time, but destroyed both our lives. Dr. Ruiz appeared in the doorway. Emma, I need to speak with you. Her condition is deteriorating again. As Emma Grace Carter stepped into the hallway for a medical consultation, Karen Miller looked at me with desperate eyes. Evelyn, you have to protect her. They will not just kill her, they will make her disappear completely. Emma has no idea how dangerous these people are. Karen, if this is true, why did you not go to the FBI years ago? I asked. Because they own people in law enforcement too, she whispered weakly. The only reason I am telling you now is because I am dying and they cannot hurt me anymore. When Emma returned, her face was grim. Mom, your liver is shutting down again. The dialysis is not working, and your kidneys are failing. We have maybe hours, not days. Then I need to give you something. Karen struggled to reach the small bag of belongings beside her bed. There is a safety deposit box number 247 at First National Bank. The key is taped under the soap dispenser in the bathroom here. What is in the box? Emma asked quietly. Everything your father documented about the money laundering names, dates, amounts, even some recorded conversations. He was planning to go to the authorities when he got strong enough. Karen's voice was getting weaker. If something happens to me, if they come for you, that evidence is your only bargaining chip. Emma sat down heavily. In the space of an hour, her entire understanding of her family's history had been shattered. Mom, I do not know if I can forgive you for the years we lost. I do not expect you to. Karen whispered, her breathing labored. But Emma, promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will not let them destroy your life the way they destroyed ours. 20 minutes later, Karen Miller slipped into unconsciousness for the final time. Emma held her mother's hand as her vital signs faded, and I watched my granddaughter say goodbye to the woman who had given her life, abandoned her, and finally, possibly saved her again. 3 days after Karen's death, Emma found the safety deposit box key exactly where her mother had said it would be. We drove to First National Bank together, both of us nervous about what we might discover. The box contained documents that confirmed every word of Karen's story. Michael Carter's medical bills, loan agreements signed with obviously false names, bank records showing payments to construction companies that did not exist, and most damning of all, recordings of conversations between Michael and men discussing money that needed to be cleaned through construction projects. My father really was involved in money laundering, Emma said, staring at a ledger in Michael's handwriting. Look at these amounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing through his business accounts. The recordings were the most chilling evidence. Michael Carter's voice weak from cancer treatments, trying to reason with the men who would eventually take his life. Discussing payment schedules with men who spoke in coded language about solving problems and handling situations. Emma, we need to take this to the authorities immediately. And tell them what? That my dead father was laundering money for criminals 14 years ago. That my recently deceased alcoholic mother claimed he was murdered. Emma Grace Carter was trying to think like a doctor, analyzing the evidence objectively. Who is going to believe this? That question was answered the next morning when Emma arrived at work to find 2 FBI agents waiting in her office. Dr. Carter, I am Agent Sarah Bailey. This is Agent Mark Ramirez. We would like to speak with you about your mother's death and some inquiries that have been made about your family. Emma's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. What kind of inquiries? A man named Anthony Moretti has been asking questions about Karen Miller's family connections, Agent Bailey said. Mr. Moretti is a person of interest in several ongoing investigations related to money laundering and racketeering. So Karen had been right. The man who had visited the hospital was exactly who she thought he was. Agent Bailey. I think there are some things you need to see. Emma made copies of everything from the First National Bank safety deposit box and turned them over to the FBI. The agents spent 3 hours reviewing the documents and recordings, their expressions growing more serious with each new piece of evidence. Dr. Carter, this information could be extremely valuable to our investigation, but it also puts you in considerable danger, Agent Bailey said. Agent Ramirez leaned forward. These people do not consider debt settled just because time has passed. What exactly are you saying? Emma asked quietly. We are saying that if Anthony Moretti and his associates believe you have information that could implicate them, or if they think you might have access to money they believe belongs to them, they will not hesitate to eliminate that threat. Emma sat back in her chair. So my mother was right. She did leave to protect me. It appears so, Agent Bailey replied. But Dr. Carter, 15 years have passed. The statute of limitations has expired on most financial crimes, and many of the people involved in these activities are dead or in prison. The current threat level is difficult to assess. Agent Bailey opened a folder. We can offer you protective custody while we investigate the current status of these criminal organizations. Protective custody means leaving my job, my life, my husband. For how long? Potentially months, possibly longer, Agent Ramirez said. Emma looked at me, then back at the agents. There has to be another option. We could arrange surveillance, monitor your activities, and hope nothing happens. But Dr. Porter, these people have already demonstrated they are willing to kill to protect their interests, Agent Collins said gravely. That night, Emma and Nathan sat at their kitchen table, the same one where they had celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, now covered in files, notes, and fear. They discussed options that all seemed impossible: leave everything they had built together and disappear into witness protection, or stay and hope that 15-year-old crimes would not catch up with them. Whatever you decide, I am with you, Nathan said, holding Emma's hand firmly. But sweetheart, you have worked too hard to build this life to let criminals destroy it. What if staying gets us both killed? She asked softly. What if running means they win? Emma was quiet for a long time, her eyes fixed on the dark window. Finally, she said, I want to stay and fight. I want to use Dad's evidence to help the FBI put these people away permanently. The next morning, Emma called Agent Collins. I want to cooperate fully with your investigation, she said. No protective custody, but I will wear a wire, set up meetings, whatever you need. Dr. Porter, that is extremely dangerous. We are talking about organized crime figures who have killed before Agent Collins warned. Agent Collins, Emma said quietly, I spent 2 months living on the streets when I was 17. I survived that. I survived medical school. I survived losing both my parents. I am not going to let fear control my life now. The plan they developed was both simple and terrifying. Emma would continue her normal routine while wearing recording equipment. If Marchetti or his associates approached her, she would try to get them to admit to Michael's murder or reveal information about their current criminal activities. The key is making them believe you are not a threat, Agent Ramirez explained. Let them think you are just a doctor who inherited some old papers and does not understand their significance. 2 weeks later, the trap was set. Emma was leaving the hospital after a long surgery when a black sedan pulled up beside her in the parking garage. Dr. Porter. The man's voice was smooth but cold. Anthony Marchetti, I knew your father. Maybe we could talk. Emma's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. I am sorry. I do not know who you are. My mother never mentioned you. He smiled faintly. We had some business dealings with your dad before he passed. This was the moment that would determine whether the evidence Michael Carter had gathered 15 years ago would finally bring justice, or whether Emma Grace Carter would become another casualty in a war she had inherited from her parents. What kind of business dealings, Mr. Marchetti? She asked. The kind that do not just disappear when someone dies, Dr. Porter, he said quietly. The kind that get passed down to family members. Emma got into the car, knowing it might be the last decision she ever made. Your father was a smart man, Dr. Porter Marchetti said as the car door shut. But he made some very stupid choices. Anthony Moretti drove through downtown Aurora like he owned the city, which, given what Emma Grace Carter was learning, he probably did in many ways. The recording device Agent Sarah Bailey had hidden in Emma Grace Carter's medical coat was capturing every word. But that would not help if Anthony Moretti decided she was too dangerous to leave alive. Mr. Moretti, I am not sure what you are talking about. My father died of cancer 11 years ago. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That is what it said on the death certificate anyway. Amazing what cooperative doctors will write when they are properly motivated. Emma's blood went cold. He was confirming everything Karen Miller had told her. Are you saying my father did not die from his illness? She asked. I am saying your father borrowed a lot of money to pay for treatments that were not covered by insurance. When he could not pay it back, we had to protect our investment. They were driving toward the warehouse district now, away from populated areas. Emma tried to keep her voice calm. How much money are we talking about? $250,000, principal plus 14 years of compound interest at 30% annually. By my calculations, your family owes us approximately $900,000. The amount was staggering, but Emma forced herself to focus on getting more information. Mr. Moretti, I am just a doctor. I do not have that kind of money, but you have something more valuable, Dr. Porter. You have access to information that could be very damaging to some very important people. I do not understand. Mr. Moretti pulled into an abandoned warehouse and parked. Your father was documenting our business relationship, recording conversations, keeping records of transactions. We know he hid that evidence somewhere before he died. Emma's heart was racing, but she realized this might be her only chance to get the full truth, even if that was true. What makes you think I know where it is? Because your mother showed up after 11 years of hiding, and 3 days later, you cleaned out her safety deposit box. They have been watching her. The FBI surveillance had not been enough to protect her from people who had been planning this confrontation for weeks. The box had been empty, except for some old photos and my father's wedding ring. Mr. Moretti turned to face her, and Emma saw the cold calculation in his eyes. Dr. Porter, I am going to be very clear about your situation. You have information we need, and we have the ability to make your life very unpleasant if you do not cooperate. What exactly do you want from me? She asked. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence your father collected. In exchange, we will consider his debt settled and leave you alone. Emma pretended to consider the offer. And if I refuse, then you will have a tragic accident. Maybe a car crash on your way home from work. Maybe a drug overdose after someone breaks into your house. These things happen to doctors more often than people realize. The threat was clear and specific, but Emma Grace Carter had spent 14 years learning how to be stronger than her circumstances. Mr. Moretti, there is something you should know about me. I have been through things that would destroy most people, and I am still here. Threatening me is not going to get you what you want. Is that right? That is right, because I do not have your evidence. I did not take anything from my mother's safety deposit box, and even if I did, I would not give it to you. Moretti's face darkened. Dr. Carter, you are making a very serious mistake. No, Mr. Moretti, you made the mistake. You killed my father. You destroyed my mother's life. And you orphaned a 17-year-old girl. Now you want me to help you cover up your crimes. Emma reached into her coat and pulled out her phone, showing him that she had been recording their entire conversation. But the really big mistake you made was confessing to murder while I was wearing an FBI wire. The warehouse doors burst open and 6 federal agents surrounded the car with weapons drawn. Agent Sarah Bailey yanked Anthony Moretti out of the driver's seat while Agent Mark Ramirez secured Emma. Anthony Moretti, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, money laundering, and threatening a federal witness. As they handcuffed Moretti, he looked at Emma with pure hatred. This is not over, Dr. Carter. Yes, it is, Emma said calmly. It has been over for 14 years. You just did not know it yet. 6 months later, Emma Grace Carter sat in federal court watching Anthony Moretti receive a life sentence for Michael Carter's murder and dozens of other crimes. The evidence Michael had gathered combined with Emma's recorded confession had dismantled an entire criminal organization. Your father would be proud, Agent Bailey told Emma after the sentencing. His documentation was key to solving cases we have been working on for years. That evening, Emma and I sat on my back porch, watching the sunset like we had so many times before. Grandma Evelyn, do you think Mom really left to protect me? Or was that just something she told herself to feel better about abandoning me? I had thought about this question for months. Emma, I think people can do the right thing for complicated reasons. Your mother made terrible choices, but in the end, her information helped you finish what your father started. I used to think becoming a doctor was about saving lives, Emma said quietly. Now I understand it is about more than that. It is about justice, about protecting people who cannot protect themselves. Emma had already started working with a foundation that provided medical care to homeless teenagers. Her experience had given her unique insight into the struggles of abandoned children, and she was using her success to help others who had faced similar trauma. What about Karen? I asked softly. Can you forgive her now that you know the truth? Emma. Grace? Carter was silent for a long time, her gaze lost in the fading light beyond the porch. I can understand her choices, she said finally, without forgiving the damage they caused. She let me believe I was unlovable for 14 years. That is not something you just forget. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but steady. But I am grateful she came back when she did. If she had not told me the truth, Moretti might have succeeded in making me disappear. 1 year later, Dr. Emma Grace Carter was named Chief of Trauma Surgery at Aurora General Hospital, the youngest department head in the hospital's history. Her acceptance speech brought the room to silence. She spoke about second chances, about the families we choose, and about the responsibility that comes with surviving what others do not. As I watched her standing at that podium, confident and radiant in her white coat, I thought about the frightened 17-year-old I had found behind a grocery store all those years ago, cold, hungry, and alone. That girl had become a woman who saved lives, fought corruption, and turned her deepest wounds into purpose. Emma never fully reconciled with her mother's memory, but she did have Michael Carter's name engraved on a plaque in the hospital's memorial garden, honoring him as a man who had made impossible choices out of love for his family. The inscription read simply, Michael Carter, father, protector, hero. His love saved more lives than he ever knew. Sometimes the best revenge is not getting. Even it is becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be, and using that strength to make sure no one else suffers what you endured. Emma Grace. Carter kept that promise every single day, one patient at a time. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments because your voice matters.